We would now like to begin Nikkei Forum, India-Japan Special Strategic and Global Partnership Priorities in the Evolving Global Order, interaction with Dr. Ajay Shankar, External Affairs Minister of India. This would be conducted on a hybrid format, on-site as well as streaming in English. Today's moderator is from Nikkei, Editor-in-Chief Toru Takahashi. Mr. Takahashi, the floor is yours. I will be the moderator for today's session. My name is Takahashi from Nikkei. Now today's speaker, Dr. Subrahmanyam Jaishankar, India's Minister of External Affairs. Dr. Jaishankar was born in New Delhi in 1955. He's a graduate of the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University, where he earned a PhD in international relations. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1977, and he has worked in embassies in Moscow and Tokyo. Also, he has served as India's ambassador to China and the United States, to name a few. The doctor was appointed as Foreign Secretary in 2015 and served till 2018, after which worked for a short while at the Tata Group, India's largest conglomerate, and he was appointed Minister of External Affairs by Prime Minister Modi in 2019. He's the author of 2 books, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World, and Why Bharat Matters, which was released earlier this year. Last year, India overtook China as the most populous nation in the world. Also in 2023, India assumed presidency of the G20. As a voice representing the global south, India's growing presence in the global arena is clear for all to see. It is now time to hear the minister's view on the challenges that we face in an increasing and turbulent world and the interaction with Japan. So Dr. Jaishankar, the floor is yours. Please welcome the minister with a big round of applause.
A very good morning to all of you. Let me say that I'm delighted to join you all at the Nikkei Forum to discuss the India-Japan partnership in the context of the evolving global order. As you're all aware, or at least as some of you would be aware, I've written 2 books that certainly discuss the changing order while also flagging the relevance of India-Japan ties. That, of course, underlines my deep conviction on this subject. It also reflects the long association I've had with this relationship and the witness I bear to its transformation in the last 2 decades. In my first book, The India Way, I spoke of the future posture of Japan as a big imponderable, because it will bring back into the global security calculus a major economy with enormous technological capabilities. In the 4 years that have passed since that first book was published, I'm even more convinced of this belief. We are transitioning into a world of AI and chips, of electric mobility and batteries, of clean and green tech, of space and drones, and indeed much else that awaits us. There is a mirror image of this assessment that pertains to India with its enormous pool of talent. On my current visit, realizing this complementarity has actually been one of the focal points of my discussion. Another point which I make in my first book is actually the historical basis for our relationship, some of which is perhaps a little unfamiliar to the current generation. What is important is that for us, history is a positive force in our relationship, something perhaps that cannot always be said in Asia. Keeping that in mind, I focused on the maritime aspects of that collaboration. A reason for doing so was that in 2019-2020, the debate about that's when my first book came out, the debate about the Indo-Pacific was still very hot, just as the jury was out on the Quad. Since then, both have settled down, finding wider acceptance even beyond the region. The maritime issue was particularly important because it was the truest example of the global commons challenge that was emerging at that time. Again, since then, it is even more so because of a lot of changes that we expect to see in terms of new maritime balances. A related issue that I flagged earlier was that of connectivity. India was the first country to display strategic clarity in regard to contemporary initiatives. We publicly urged that connectivity endeavors must be collaborative, be transparent, be viable, and be respectful of sovereignty. Frankly speaking, most of the world wobbled in this regard at that moment. Time and experience has brought them around, but not without a cost. In my second book, Why Bharat Matters, I have approached the Japan relationship more explicitly from the perspective of the Quad. One question that has intrigued many observers is why the Quad failed in 2007 but succeeded in 2017 and thereafter. The answer, of course, is that in 2007, none of the parties was willing to invest the necessary capital, the political capital, to make that happen. And they would not, because with the possible exception of a few voices in Japan, none of them actually had a good reading of how developments in the Indo-Pacific would unfold over the next decade. In 2017, we were clearly much wiser as a result of intervening events. But even this is not a full answer in itself. The fact is that of the Quad members, 2 of them have treaty relationships with the third. India, in many ways, is an outlier. But my case is that between 2007 and 2017, India's bilateral relationship with the United States, with Japan, with Australia, has changed so drastically that a Quad arrangement has become both viable and sustainable. I have compared these 3 bilateral relationships in my book, and you can see that while there is a parallel time frame for improvement between India's ties with US and Japan, the Australian one has really played a remarkable catch-up in the last decade. Having said that, I would strongly caution that there is no room for complacency in diplomacy. Relationships need to be continuously tended at various levels. They also need to be constantly refreshed. There will always be new complexities, but equally fresh opportunities. This is how India and Japan should approach each other today. Overall, and I say this after a long discussion yesterday with my counterpart, Minister Kamikawa, we are convergent on the big picture and the key concerns. Our inclination and ability to respond in a more coordinated manner has also improved. We can, for example, see that in defense, where a bilateral military exercise is going on between India and Japan, even as we speak. It is much better in investment, though trade remains flatter than we would wish. India and Japan are also having an active conversation on emerging technologies that hold much promise. Creating new supply chains and building a stronger digital connect are priorities for both of us. We work well together in world politics, including, of late, in the multilateral organizations. People-to-people linkages, however, lag behind and clearly need more attention. This is the report card right now. My argument is that India-Japan ties will both draw strength from our larger activities together, especially from the Quad, but as well contribute to its effectiveness and to its breadth. The bottom line is that the world is changing, the Indo-Pacific is changing, India and Japan are changing, but that in our relationship, many solutions for us nationally as well as for the region and for the world lie there. So once again, I thank you all for joining me today, and I look forward to the conversation.
はい、ジャイシャンカール氏どうもありがとうございます。
Your Excellency, thank you so much in terms of relationship between Japan and India and the surrounding circumstances. You have provided us a very insightful, provoking speech. So I'd like to now move on to the talking session.
はい、ここからのトークセッション。
So the talk session from here. So I would like to ask question, if I may, to His Excellency. And then if time allows, I would like to welcome questions from the floor as well. So thank you very much. So, Minister, Doctor, the speech that you have provided to us, you talked about the fact that no room for complacency in diplomacy. We always need to make improvement. That really stuck into my mind. And relative to that, in terms of the strategic autonomy, under the Indian diplomacy policy, I would like to, of course, ask that, of course, you center the value of the nation, and then you are flexible, placing importance in national interests. But the presence of India is becoming more important in this region, and in the international benefit, you may be asked to act on the interest of the international community rather than your own interest. What do you think about this balance?
I think in diplomacy, it is possible to act in your own interest, in good diplomacy, act in your own interest, but also in the interest of the international community. I don't think there are two choices that you have to make, if you know how to reconcile those choices. You spoke about strategic autonomy. In a way, for many countries, strategic autonomy means having a very independent position where you decide, make your choices, your judgments on the basis of the merits of the issue. But today's strategic autonomy, especially after COVID, has come to acquire also a bigger meaning. For many countries, that means having in your control or your influence some very basic issues which relate to your national well-being. So health security, food security, energy security, they have all become part of the effort towards strategic autonomy. So it is not just a very narrow foreign policy debate anymore. I think there are economic issues involved, there are development issues involved, there are technology issues involved. I mean, today countries would not like to be dependent on somebody else, particularly if it's a single source, for our technology requirements. They may even have concerns about the kind of technology which are coming from there. So my sense is today the world is moving towards many more players who are trying to advance their interest but also reconcile it with the rest of the world. And when you speak about where India is, yes, our economic size is increasing, our political influence is increasing, in technology areas our capabilities are growing. But I also believe India speaks for a lot of countries in the world, that today if there are 125 countries of the global south, I would say in many ways what India says reflects the collective belief of many of these countries. So we feel on the whole we articulate positions which are both for the good of the world and for the good of India.
はいまあ
Well, relative to that, in terms of relationship with Russia, India, in terms of the border conflict with Russia, you have been talked about the importance of the territorial integrity and sovereignty, but you have not come out in terms of criticizing Russia aggression to Ukraine, and people may think that this double standard. So, what would be your position on this comment?
You know, my position would be that the world is a complicated place, and there are many important principles and beliefs in the world. What happens sometimes in politics, in world politics, is countries pick one issue, one situation, one principle, and they highlight it because it suits them. But if one looks at the principle itself, I mean, we in India know better than almost any other country because immediately after our independence, we experienced aggression. We experienced an effort to change our boundaries, and even today, parts of India are occupied by another country. But we did not see the world respond saying, oh, there's a great principle involved, and therefore let us all go with India. So, yes, today we are being told that there are principles involved. I wish I had seen that principle in play for the last 80 years. I've seen those principles cherry-picked when it suits people and not when it doesn't suit people. But I do think it's an important principle, because, I would say injustice was done to us. I'm not advocating it should be done to everybody else. We have been very clear. My Prime Minister has stood next to President Putin and has said that we do not believe that this is an era of war. We are today for resolving this conflict. We want to see the end to this conflict. But we believe that every conflict finally ends in some kind of, people come to the table. That's how conflicts end. I mean, you can also decide a conflict on the battlefield, but we don't think this conflict will be decided on the battlefield.
はい今お話
So, in what you have said, the global south, 125 countries you mentioned. So, in terms of global south, this concept, I would like to hear your opinion, Minister. India last year was a presidency of a G20 meeting, and within that, you also have organized a Voice of the Global Summit, and in terms of G7 have said Global Summit is a little sounding too high-handed. We try to avoid this word, and in Japan, we use the word Global Summit quite frequently. But the gap, how do you reckon this gap that we see regarding the notion of Global South?
Sorry, which word do you try to avoid?
グローバルさ
The word Global South, we try to avoid them.
Because I see a lot of countries who are not part of the Global South, not always comfortable with the word Global South. So that itself is worth thinking about. Now, what is the Global South? To me, Global South would be collection of countries, roughly 125, I'm giving you a number, who would have gone through the colonial experience, have become independent after that, who in their history have seen the damage, the enormous injustice done to them, who are still in a developing mode. So there is a broad, I would say, income category. These would really be relatively low income countries, and who have a certain sense of solidarity which comes both from shared history, shared politics, as well as from shared economic development issues. So on a lot of issues, these countries actually feel for each other. They come for each other. If you are in a situation, you're all in the room. The countries of the global south will know. I mean, if there are 200 countries in the room, we would know, okay, which one of us has been through this, and we have that bonding which comes from it. That feeling has been intensified by COVID because by and large, many countries of the global south, they felt that they were the last in the line to get the vaccine, that many of their concerns about debt, concerns about trade, concerns about inflation, these were not recognized by the major powers in the world. Even they felt even up to the time when India became G20 president, that their concerns were not even on the agenda of the G20. They have a strong feeling about this. So we did last year 2 meetings of the Voice of the Global South because we wanted to listen to these 125 countries and then put before the G20 a set of issues which we said are the collective views of these 125 countries. Therefore, I can tell you, as a foreign minister who travels a lot within Asia, to Africa, to Asia, in those continents, Global South is very popular. In those continents, they know exactly what is happening, who is speaking up for them, how their issues are getting on the table. They don't think it is a coincidence that it was under the Indian presidency that African Union, which had long been promised a seat in the G20, finally got a seat. So the Global South believes us.
Thank you very much. At the summit, 125 countries have participated. China was not part of it. So is China part of the Global South or not? What are your thoughts, Doctor?
At the 2 summits which we convened, I don't believe China was present.
Very simple answer. Excellent, Doctor. And I do have another question. IEA, about the negotiation to join IEA, the International Energy Agency. So IEA has announced that they would officially engage in the negotiation with India. So last year in October, you have applied for the membership into IEA. What is the reason behind that? Also, the second point, in principle, participation in the IEA is conditional on membership in the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Is India also interested in joining the OECD?
On the International Energy Agency, I think the reason why we applied to join was that today India is becoming a very important energy player. One, in the sense of our consumption. So as you know, we are today the 5th largest economy, and that is reflected in the consumption. 2, because we import the overwhelming proportion of our energy. So in the energy trade also we have a very big role. 3, there are best practices in this field. We have also started to acquire energy assets outside, production assets outside India. That is happening more and more. It has happened in Asia. It is now happening in Africa and Latin America. And we are also building up strategic reserves, like Japan did many, many years ago. So if you look at the totality of all of this, it makes sense that we would benefit from a membership of IEA, and IEA would in turn would find India joining it to be of advantage. Obviously, there are some things which are very specific to India. So the IEA membership knows that, so that is under discussion. But we are quite confident that they will take a positive look. On the issue of OECD, quite honestly, I don't at this point, at this time, there's really no answer I can give you. But I do note that Indonesia, I believe, has applied for membership. So I do note that, but I really cannot, speak of any position or even thinking that India has on this matter, because it has not matured to that point.
はい、はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to ask the floor to pose any questions. So those who have any questions, please raise your hand. Please, this person in the middle, please.
あ、今マイクが参りますので。
We will bring the microphone to you. Please hold.
My name is Sonobe. I'm the dean of the ADB's think tank called ADBI. Your Excellency, thank you very much for the very insightful remarks. But your talk mostly about bilateral relationship. But how about multilateral relationships? For example, both India and Japan could have played more important roles in the United Nations if they were given the kind of seats or positions that they deserve. So could you please share your thoughts about this and other aspects of any aspect of multilateralism? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mentioned it in passing because it was also something yesterday I discussed in some detail with Minister Kamikawa. Most of us actually understand that there is a great need to reform the United Nations. It's a common sense, I would say, conclusion, because when the United Nations was founded, there were roughly about 50 countries who were members. Today, there are almost 200 countries who are members. So in any organization, if the membership has grown 4 times, the leadership and the decision making of that organization cannot remain the same. And we are seeing today the problem when there is inadequate change. Because if you look today at many of the key issues in the world, the UN is not playing the role which the UN should be playing. Now, it's not like there has never been change. There has been change. The Security Council has been expanded once to bring in more non-permanent members. We know change will come. We know there will be a change in the Security Council. The real issue is, when does it come? How long does it take? And what form will it take? Now, again, even if you look at what form will it take, I think some parts of it are quite obvious. There is not a single African member. There is not a single Latin American member. I mean, Africa is a continent of more than 50 nations, but there's no member. So, and in the case of Asia, yes, there is one member, but if you look today at the dynamism of Asia, the demographics of Asia, the size of nations, I think there's a very, very strong case as well. These discussions are going on. We felt that, in many ways, the discussions have not progressed because those who are opposed to any change have found ways of delaying it. But we have now reached a stage where actually different countries and groups are presenting. There is a process called the Intergovernmental Negotiation, IGN process. The process is currently chaired by Kuwait and Austria. They are today being presented with different models of, of how such change can happen. The developing countries, the Global South, has presented its model. It's a group called L69 there. Mexico has presented its model. On behalf of small countries, Liechtenstein has presented its model. I think G4, that is India, Japan, Germany, and Brazil, we will be presenting our model as well. And I'm sure there'll be an African presentation. There may be some other regions. So it is a process which is moving. We believe that process cannot be stopped. It can be delayed. But in the good of the world, the sooner it happens, the better it would be. If the most populous countries of the world are kept out, or if some of the biggest resource providers for the UN are kept out, that's not good for the organization. So we want that realization really to grow. And as someone who's seen this debate over many, many decades, I do feel today that there is a certain momentum which has come about.
はい、続きまして質問を。
Thank you very much. Any other questions? This person in the front, please.
その前の方、いいです。はい、どうぞ。
Yeah, thank you, sir. So my question is from the viewpoint of the Quad framework, and I would like to know that is there any nuclear strategic planning is planned under the Quad framework to address the
Sorry, is there any?
nuclear strategic planning for the power generation under the Quad framework to address the climate change through the energy or clean energy options? Thank you.
The Quad does discuss climate change. The Quad has discussed energy and technology issues, but we have not had an explicit coordinated discussion on nuclear energy per se. If you look at the Quad countries, three of us, Japan, US, India, we have very substantial nuclear programs. Australia less so because of their situation. But they are very big uranium providers. So we have a common interest in it. But in the case of Quad, what I have seen since 2017, we are actually moving very, very rapidly. Almost at every Quad meeting, every time the foreign ministers meet, every time the leaders meet, more and more issues are getting added on. Maybe next time we talk, I might have a different answer than I have right now.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Your excellent speech. My name is Manish Gupta. I work for Mitsubishi Mahindra Agri Machinery in Japan. I've come here with my wife Shalini. We would like to hear from you why Bharat matters.
You can hear from me, but it would be better if you actually got the book and read it. And the reason is I have a whole lot of reasons why Bharat matters. But if I fast forward you through the book, I would say why Bharat matters today is in many ways we've had a remarkable change in India in the last 10 years. It's a change that anybody who goes to India can see. The infrastructure is changing, the education levels is changing, the economic progress is more visible. There is a certain buzz about innovation, about startups. So actually today it's a very, very optimistic, energetic society, but one which is very confident about its own abilities. So the sense of both, of what we can do has grown. But it's not only the present and the future, it's also about who we are, because it's very important for all societies to appreciate their own culture, their own tradition, their own heritage. Perhaps in the past, for a variety of reasons, this may not have been as strongly done as it should have been done. So my argument for why Bharat matters is Bharat matters because there is a sharper awareness of our own identity, of our own past, of our civilizational heritage which we can bring to the international level. Bharat matters because along with tradition, there is also a big technology contribution today that India can make, so it's both tradition and technology. And Bharat matters because if I were to go to your first question, there is, at a time when many countries are moving away from the world, they are saying, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to, why should I do that? Actually, India is doing more. That if you look at our development projects, if you look at our first responder operations, if you look even at the fact that we provided vaccines to 100 countries in the world, and we gave vaccines when we were still vaccinating our own people. We had not finished that. So there is today a mindset in India to grow more, to do more, but also do more with the world. That is essentially why I think Bharat matters.
Any other question? So person sitting at the back, maybe? So, in the middle, the third row, in the middle.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful, remarks. I'm Hemant. I'm an assistant professor in Shimane University, which is a very small, very far from Tokyo. It's a very regional part of Japan. So my question to you is, we know that there's a very strong strategic and friendship and good relation between India and Japan, almost in all spheres. But most of the activities seem to happen between big cities of the two countries. So given the demographic change and population decline and so on, in Japan, where I live, I can see that every day. So what are your thoughts on how India and Indian diaspora can contribute to regional revitalization in Japan? Thank you.
Thank you bringing up that point. I feel that today our political relationship between India and Japan is very strong. I also feel that in a domain like defense and security, it has developed very well. But if there are two domains which hasn't moved at the same level as the political relationship, one is the economic domain. We are not seeing, our politics is much better, frankly, than our business. Business is not bad, but business should be growing very much faster than what it has done today. And I think many of the new technologies today offer us the chance to do that. And Japan has a long history in India. There are many areas where there are areas where Japanese companies have been there for more than 150 years in India. The other, which pertains to what you are saying, is I feel the people-to-people linkages is still relatively limited. We have, there are, as an example, because you are from a university, we have somewhere between 1.1 to 1.3 million students, Indian students, out of India at any given time. I was told that the number of Indian students in Japan is about 1,500. Now, my math says that is 0.1% of roughly of the Indian students abroad. So to me, these are examples of where we can actually, we should be doing more. We should be doing much more on language teaching. Because language teaching is good for people-to-people relations, it's also good for business. And eventually it is good for a larger understanding between India and Japan. It's good for politics as well. So there are areas we need to work hard. I think anybody who can make any contribution, you certainly, if you are out of Tokyo, your contribution is even more important. I would urge you all, each of you in your own way, to find ways of contributing to that relationship.
はい、続いていかが
So thank you. Any other question? Please speak to the microphone for the interpretation's sake.
Thank you very much. My name is Sojun Shin, Associate Professor at Tokyo International University. I'm from South Korea. I have 3 questions. The first question addresses India's Indo-Pacific strategy, which emphasizes free, open, and rules-based Indo-Pacific strategy. But what is the strategic importance of this India's strategy to Asian neighbors other than Japan? And second question is about Quad. I'm wondering whether Quad dialogue can be extended to other Asian countries like South Korea or ASEAN community. Well, you mentioned about India as outlier, but there are many other Asian countries which feel like outliers themselves, especially in the Quad dialogue, I guess. So I'm wondering about your thought. And the third question is about Global South. Sorry. Well, I think India's role as the leader in Global South, making the Global South community, their solidarity is very important, especially in terms of economic role. When we look at the South Asian neighbors like Sri Lanka announced economic default in 2022. And I'm wondering whether India is thinking the role in the South Asian community or maybe further in Asia as the leading economy, like as the 5th largest economy. Thank you.
Okay, many questions, but your first question, does India value its ties, its relationship with other Asian countries? Just so that you know, I'm coming to Tokyo from Seoul. I was in South Korea for 2 days before I came here. We also have a very, very deep relationship with the ASEAN. In fact, for us, we associate that with what we call the reform period in India, when we opened up our economy and did many more things. And we did that by dealing much more with other countries, other economies in Asia, ASEAN, South Korea, Japan. So the short answer is yes. For us, many other partners in Asia are very important, and we certainly want to take those relationships forward as well. In fact, I gave a speech, by the way, in Korea about the importance of India-Korea relations. It's on the YouTube, so please take a look at it. The second, you spoke about outliers, and your question, can Quad include other countries? First of all, if you add another country to a Quad, it won't be called the Quad anymore. But the answer really is, the 4 of us have, in some ways we are very dissimilar, but there are many things which bring us together. We are all 4 of us currently in the Quad very strong maritime powers. If you see in the Indo-Pacific, we are located at 4 corners, almost you can say, of the Indo-Pacific. My own point, why did the Quad work in 2017, was in each case our bilateral relationship had grown very substantially. So in each case, for example, we have today 2+2 defense and foreign affairs interaction as well. So it's not something, which you take a decision lightly. I mean, there were very good reasons why the four happened to be the four in question. On the issue of Global South, Sri Lanka is a very pertinent example, and I thank you for mentioning it. When Sri Lanka got into economic difficulties, in a way it comes to the first issue we were discussing, that yes, there is a very, this conflict, there's this tragic conflict taking place in Ukraine, but if you look at the consequences of it for the Global South, everywhere in the Global South, energy costs went up, food costs went up, fertilizer costs went up, inflation went up. And a country like Sri Lanka just had everything came together and they had this huge economic crisis. Now, during this period, if you look to see which countries stepped forward to help Sri Lanka, we in India actually put together a package within a matter of a few weeks, in fact a few months, which was $4.5 billion to Sri Lanka in grants and loans. Now, just so that you understand, the IMF package, which took much longer, was less than $3 billion. So our direct bilateral support we gave to Sri Lanka was actually 50% larger than what the IMF gave. And more important, was given in time. It was given at a time when Sri Lanka was really struggling. So we do recognize today, that as a big economy, we have more responsibilities. But I also would like the world to recognize that we may be a big economy, but we are still an economy whose per capita income is below $3,000. So when we give something to the world, it is done with a great deal of sacrifice and really a great effort on the part of people of India. I mean, the sense of international obligation is very strong, as I said during vaccination, that while we had not completed our vaccination, yet we gave vaccines. So we take our Global South responsibility very, very seriously.
And apologies, if you can just keep your question to one per person. So this person at the far back, please.
So my name is Kaustubh and I am a student in Japan. I'm a master's student in Nagoya. And everyone's been like throwing the word around Global South. And one thing common between all the countries in the Global South is we all want to, shift to the Global North. Like all of our educated individuals, all of the qualified individuals want to move to the Global North. So do you think there will be a time one day like when Indians will not want to move out, not want to have to move out and would love to like stay back in India and as India is a developing economy, it's rapidly developing, but the numbers are rising who want to like move abroad, who want to go work abroad. So do you think there will be a time in the future where, these numbers will reduce?
I'm just curious, how long have you been studying in Japan?
1.5 years.
1.5 years. Look, my sense is that there's already a big change happening, because at the end of the day, if I had an opportunity at home versus having an opportunity abroad, why would I move out of my own environment if I had that opportunity? So I look at the problem somewhat differently than you do. I mean, to me, it is a question of creating growth and opportunity in India. To the extent that growth rates are faster, but also it's not just a growth rate. Along with that, if employment opportunities are more, if there is a startup culture, not everybody today wants a salaried job, not everybody wants to join the government. There are people, much of the attraction of people who go out sometimes is that they do their own thing. Now, if you can create a situation in India where that is possible, I think the youth of India would have a much more optimistic view of their own prospects in India. And that is one of the changes which is happening today. I mean, if you look today at the number of startups, I mean, we have today I think just in numbers terms, the third largest startups in the world. You look at the number of unicorns which have come up in this period, because they are inspirational examples for every other startup, because somebody doing a startup hears of a unicorn, they feel, okay, I can also be like that. I would also say, when you see the expansion of the economy in many more areas, I give you a very, very contemporary example. We had one very small fab in India in Chandigarh. That was the only facility of the kind which existed after 80 years. On the semiconductor side, we were importing everything. And yet, everybody will tell you this is the industry of the future. This is where the jobs will grow. We've had companies from abroad actually employ people in India. So they are design engineers working for foreign semiconductor companies located in India. Now, once we have taken the decision that no, we will also enter this field, we will also set up foundries, we will also create the displays and the ATMPs for operations, you will see that anybody who has an interest in that field will now think, yes, I have an opportunity in India. So a big part of the challenge which you have flagged is about doing well in India, and to do that, frankly, we need today a leadership which has that kind of vision, which has that ability to do it on the ground. Because sometimes people talk, but to promise something and in 2 or 3 or 5 years to actually see the factory out there. Last year, Prime Minister went to the US. One of the agreements which we sort of concluded was with this company called Micron. Now, already the Micron, we are now talking 6 months, 7 months. The Micron factory is coming up as we speak. So I think there is that big change in India which also you need to recognize, and I'm sure it will be very good for people of your generation.
はい、続いていかがでしょうか。
So any other question? So on the left-hand side, the fourth row from the front.
はい。
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the Nikkei Forum for this opportunity. And sir, it's an honor to hear you in person. My name is Devin, and my question is somewhat relates to the answer that you were discussing about the question related to why Bharat matters, and also a couple of points related to the last question. As a part of the Indian diaspora, there are these tiny things that really matter when we go back to India, be it on a holiday, be it on a longer sort of, couple of weeks, 4 weeks. So when we see things changing in India, and as you rightly pointed out, I think the leadership has it in it right now, to make these changes. And we have, I think, seen these changes happening in the last 10 years, especially. So when you interact with the diaspora, not just in Japan, but globally, are there any points that you consider which are then inculcated in the policy making so that, those reflect as tiny changes that would eventually happen, that we'll see in the coming years? Thank you.
In a way, I don't know if I'm answering quite what you are asking. There are many things happening around the world, which for us it is important to understand, appreciate, and see if they can feed back into what's happening in India. This is not unusual. In fact, if you look at Japan's own history, in the 19th century and a large part of the 20th century, actually, Japan was very, very enthusiastic about identifying best practices in the world and applying them to Japan, and obviously, in many cases, modifying them for Japanese conditions. I do believe today that kind of mindset is there when it comes to policy making and governance in India. I mean, I have myself seen the impact which different achievements in other countries have, the influence that they've had on sort of decisions. This could be on cleaning up rivers. It could be about best practices in railways. It could be tech stuff. In my view, often these little things can accumulate it. I mean, a big problem, for example, we used to have in infrastructure building was the time taken for surveys. Today, if you look at this program initiative we call Gati Shakti, so much of it is done between drones and satellites. It has dramatically crunched the time. So this willingness to learn from others in the world, I think is a very important part of changing things in India. And I mean, to those Indians who are living and working abroad, I think you particularly can make a contribution. You can make a contribution physically, but you can also make it in very ways by sensitizing people or communicating to people back home.
はい、ありがとうございます。インドの方からいっぱい質問いただいてるんで。
So we have many questions from the Indian national, and we would definitely like to hear from the Japanese national as well.
じゃあこちらの前の方お願いします。
My name is Shikata, a company fellow of Mitsubishi Company Limited. Let me ask you one thing about Taiwan. Taiwan contingency is the Japan contingency, as late Prime Minister said. If it happens, I'm afraid China most likely coordinate with Russia or DPRK. In such a case, what will be India's response to such a contingency as a very important partner of Japan? Do you think India is ready to impose sanctions on China and on Russia, for example? Thank you very much.
Let me make 2-3 observations here. By and large, it has not been India's foreign policy method really to do this sanctions issue. The sanctions is something which is very much rooted in a Western way, or I would say a G7 way of working, because they control the means to apply the sanctions. In fact, I'm trying to think the only time when we have very strongly advocated sanctions ourselves was against South Africa during the apartheid period, when actually at that time most of the developed countries did not want to do sanctions. If you look at even current sanctions, sanctions, it's a big debate, frankly, in our business. Do sanctions really work or they don't work? What is the cost? What is the cost to people who apply sanctions? So I just want to make that one point. It's nothing to do with Taiwan or China or Russia. As sanctions, not every country in the world thinks that this is the immediate, right, effective way of conveying what you want to convey. Regarding any contingency which happens today, the state of the world is very disturbed. The state of the world is very disturbed. We are seeing conflicts. As I said, we saw COVID. There are very big economic issues which are below the surface. And if one travels, especially, again, I'm coming back to Global South, when you physically go there and see what a toll it has taken the last few years on them, how much today the spending on education, on health, on public, all of this has come down. So the last thing that the world needs to see is any kind of disturbance. At this moment, how to strengthen the stability and the growth and the development of the world should actually be a common objective. Beyond that, I think as a foreign minister, I should not say anything to you.
そろそろ予定していた時間なんです。
So now it is coming to a time to close, but we'd like to also have one last question from the Japanese person, maybe, sitting on the side.
こんにちは。
Hello.
Professor from Kendai University. My question is about the coming general election. The result of the election will affect the Indian diplomacy as it is likely you will have the long-term government, maybe a 15 years long-term government can pursue the stable negotiation with other countries. So could you answer this question?
Sorry, I didn't fully understand that. Your point was that we have a stable government?
So you will have the, maybe you will have the 15 years stable government.
100%. We'll have 15 years. We may have even longer.
Okay, hi. But it could be the 20 years.
Maybe.
Okay. So could you answer the question, please?
It's again, I want to first begin by saying every country, every society is different. So what can apply to India need not always be the same for other countries. But our own experience was that the lack of stability in politics, which really meant to have majorities in parliament, to take decisions, to take bold steps. It makes a very, very big difference. When I look, and I've been in government, frankly, a very long time. I've seen many, many governments. I've seen majority governments. I've seen minority governments. I've seen coalition governments. I've seen single party governments. You can see today that if you have actually a reformist, a leadership with a vision, with a commitment, with a sense of wanting to do things, but that leadership is backed by a very strong political mandate. And a strong political mandate, ideally in democracies, means having a majority in parliament. That is really what is the combination you need, because you can have a majority but you don't have a vision, or you have a vision but you don't have the political support. So you need both. Now what has happened in our case is certainly for the last 10 years we've had both, and we hope to continue that. In many cases we have seen decisions which were debated for years, but suddenly you found the ability to do it. One good example for us, for example, was a sort of a national tax system, because our tax, because it was so regional, it was very complicated and frankly not even very efficient. I would say, we had some very long-standing issues regarding integration of one of our states. So we have been able to take good decisions, tough decisions, but needed decisions. Once you have both that leadership and that mandate, and that means long-term stability. And I would even say, as someone who has a little bit of insight into the business world, The business world today very much values political stability, because for them, political stability means policy stability. Anybody who's coming, somebody who's taking a big bet on India, they want to know, okay, what will India be for the next 10 years? Now, if their sense is, I don't even know what it will be like a year from now or 6 months from now, the investor, could be a domestic investor, could be a foreign investor, they will hesitate. So, I can, when you do a kind of a country evaluation, a risk evaluation, or I think political stability is a very important part of that. And fortunately, that's been good for us for the last decade, and I'm very confident for the next one.
So, Minister, let me ask you one more short question, right? So, we know you as an incumbent senator, upper house of India, right? But however, some news reports said you might run for the MP in the coming general election. So are you really preparing for that?
I didn't expect that question here, and that too from you.
Yeah.
What happens is typically, you make your political decision based on, frankly, what the party leadership decides. So I have just got re-elected to the upper house last year. For us, it's a 6-year term. My membership of parliament is secure. Beyond that, that is not really a question I can answer.
Thanks very much. はい、どうもありがとうございました。じゃあ
It is time. With that, we would like to conclude today's forum. We should give a round of applause to the Minister. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Jaishankar 外務大臣、ありがとう。
Thank you very much, Minister Jaishankar. Would you give a round of applause to the Minister again? With that, we